Hi there. Good morning. It's Heather Matthews from Kestrel Fields Studio, and I'm here today on a somewhat cloudy Saturday morning, and just happy to be here with you to have the chance to talk a little bit more about the creative life and share with you today. My topic is, why is art important? Why does it matter? And oh my gosh, what a huge topic. Like, I've been thinking about this now for more than 24 hours. I mean, this is an ongoing question, but why does art matter is sort of a huge question of life, right? And so I was thinking, well, let's just calm it down. I don't need to come up with the answer to, life, the world, the universe, and all that stuff. But I can tell you about why art matters to me. Why does art matter to me? And it has to do with the fact that art tells more of the story, right? So we're going to come back to that, but let's just start with art is important. And if you wonder about that, then I would be so fascinated to have a conversation with you, because I feel like sometimes in our culture, art is so quickly poo-pooed, or it's quickly considered not legitimate as a job, or if you make art, isn't that so nice? I'm just gonna go back over there to my job. You can carry on with your little project, right? I feel like art is trivialized in our culture, and but I think also many people would say that art is important. And so how do you reckon with that sort of dissonance, right? So, I mean, art is in our homes, it entertains us, it adds color and music and dance to our lives. It's a sort of thing that's really easy to take for granted. Like, if you were to imagine life without art in it for just 1 minute, I wonder what you would notice just in the room you're sitting in, right? There's some art right there behind me, right? Or who came up with this design for this towel? Or I don't know, there's art everywhere. Look at this beautiful sweater I'm wearing. And so it's easy to take it for granted, but I like to think about it more intentionally. So one artist that I like, Theastric Gates, he's a real concept artist and based out of Chicago. He once said something in a TED Talk that he gave that continues to bounce around in my head and has for years. And that is that beauty is a basic service. So if you think about basic services, housing, access to healthcare, food, he would put the concept of beauty in with those other very important basic needs that humans have. And that really resonates with me. I can't agree more. But the thing is, too, is that art isn't always beautiful, right? So then how do we think about art as more than just beauty or entertainment? It really goes deeper than that. So I'm going to go a little further back and a little deeper and tell you how, for me, let's talk about something else, like history, right? Economics, geopolitics, major human conflicts. Those things were always hard for me to learn about when I was younger. I could never become interested in the stories or the histories of mostly men who were considered great or infamous. And they were usually rich and noble, or they were military people. And they would be making choices that affected all of humanity and would make big things change, like the borders of countries would change, or it would start or end wars, or they would build an empire or lose an empire. That's sort of what classic history is when you're learning about that in an American public school education. And I always found myself wondering about the regular people. What about the women? What about the children? What about the poor people? Or when the middle class came to be a thing, what about the middle class? What are their stories and what are their histories? And there's so many stories that can help you to understand the way things were, and those things never were addressed. And so then, when I went to art school for the first time in 2012, I started my first semester, and all of a sudden I had to take art history, and I was so not interested. I have to tell you, I had to take 5 semesters total of art history in my program. And the very first class I took was art history, and I was sure I didn't need it, and it wouldn't help me, and I don't know. It just felt like a thing I had to check off a list. My expectations were quickly dashed, and within a few classes I was totally hooked and totally engaged, because this professor of mine started talking about all those other things in history that I was interested in, right? Let's talk about the design of buildings. Let's talk about the perspective of women in the 1400s, and how their likenesses were painted in a different way than the likenesses of men. Let's talk about how social movements impacted the way that we see and view things, and then how those things that we see and view were being represented by different perspectives, all from people of all different types, rich, poor, all sorts of artists who were either had patrons or just went out on their own or tried to fit within a system, like the people who would paint for the royalty in Spain, or the people who had workshops in Italy. There's so many different stories, and all of a sudden history started to come alive, and history was exciting. And another semester I took Native American art history, and it was so eye-opening, because the truth is that Native American art history is actually Native American history, but told through the lens of art that's being made or has been made about Native American history. And I was so excited to finally learn about Native American history in detail. I mean, it's very lacking, again, in the public school system. You don't learn a lot about it. And so here I was, an adult, learning about Native American history for the first time in detail. But it was, Native American history is somewhat brutal, right? Like, this is just an example. There's so much human history that's brutal and that's a little bit harsh, and that, humans do bad things to each other. But through this lens of art, it's like I could swallow it. It's like it was accessible. And that's where I start understanding why art matters to me. You get to start seeing things in a new way that have always been there, or maybe you can see things for the first time because you couldn't see them before, right? If you hear about some battle that happened in your country's history, well, why is that interesting until you start thinking about the people who were affected by the battle? And then what if you're looking at a painting of the battle? Right? Like, then, okay, there's people who are represented. And then, or there was this one artist, Titus, last name not coming to me. He gave an amazing TED Talk about the characters in like large scale paintings that have a lot of different people in them, and how a lot of times all of the people in the painting would be white, and then down in the corner there's this like little black kid in the corner with a dog. And in his TED Talk, Titus Kafar, in his TED Talk, he actually takes white paint and he paints over all of the people in the whole painting except for the little black kid with the dog. And he starts showing you how there's more to this story, there's more to this painting, and what is the story of the black kid and what is the story of the little dog. And I find that to be so interesting. All of a sudden my perspective has shifted, and all of a sudden I'm interested and I'm engaged and I want to know more. And so art has helped me to approach like bigger ideas that I don't feel like I have a connection to, or it's helped me to understand harder things. I was able to articulate this recently at the studio tour in Fort Collins in late October. And And it's because I was talking about a piece that I made in 2020. So in 2020, I finished art school. I had my final art show. And one of the pieces was a piece I had been working on for 2 years. And it's called Smoke Screen. And I'll find a picture and put it in my stories after this. The whole project was about weaving and dyeing and gradient and color, and I really enjoyed the process, and I learned so much about all of those things. But in the end, what it turned out to be was a thing that created a softness for a really hard time. Spring of 2020 and fall of 2020 was a hard time for many of us. And in Colorado in particular, not only was the COVID thing happening, but also there were some really bad wildfires very near to Fort Collins and clouding up the sky, making it so we couldn't go outside, and just making it dark and doomsday. And it turns out I took a picture of the sky one day, and then I was looking at the work I was making, this smoke screen, and this weaving project, which came to be known as Smoke Screen. And they had the same colors, right? The sky was, at sunset, it was sort of golden and moving into a purple sky as dusk fell. And then my project was also golden and moving into purples. And so I called it Smoke Screen because you'll see it has these panels of color, so the sort of gold moving into purple. And then there's these panels of fabric. But in between each panel is sort of a negative space. And you can still see through this room divider screen by looking through that negative space. So, it's not that I don't want to face the bad things. It's not that I don't want to understand the hard parts of living. I want to understand those, and I want to understand and have compassion for people who are going through hard times. I want to be aware of my surroundings and be aware of the world. But sometimes the world's reality is really harsh. Let's just take the wildfires during COVID. That was really an intense moment. And yet then there's this piece of art that I could put in front of it and call it a screen. And it didn't block it entirely. It just put beauty in the way of it. It put softness in the way of it. And I think when I start talking about why art matters to me, then I think about it that way. It's it's a way for me to approach hard things in the world or concepts that I don't understand, and then move into it sort of more gently and come to it from a variety of different perspectives. Another artist I've always admired since I learned about her in Native American art history was Shan Gosshorn. She was an Oklahoma-based artist from the Cherokee Nation, and she made baskets that she would integrate photographs that she took or that she found, from the Smithsonian, and she would weave them into baskets using traditional weaving patterns from her tribe. And what she said was, you take this hard concept of Indian boarding schools, which was a really interesting concept, and then wove it into this basket, and then put a basket on a pedestal. And she said that a lot of times prior to that project, that people would sort of back away from her work when she was asking them to consider the harshness of Native American history. But with the baskets, she found that people were leaning in, and that they were more interested in talking about what actually happened to Native American children with the boarding schools, and that it was more of an accessible way to talk about something hard. So that's however articulate I've been today, that's a little bit of an example of why I think art matters so much and what it means to me. It provides a way to talk about something big, small, funny, serious, intense, light, but in a lot of different ways. It brings a new way of seeing. And that, I think, is why I care so much about providing time and space for artists to make the thing that they need to make. So Kestrel Fields Studio was sort of born of that desire to help you make what you need to make. And That's because I want to see your perspective, and I want others to be able to see it so that we can continue the dialogue around all of those different things in the human experience. So, also, last night I got to go to an incredible dance concert, Paul Taylor Dance Company, and it was so amazing. I had a smile on my face the entire time. There was a live orchestra, dance on the stage, incredible seats for not that much money, and I just felt the beauty of it, the beauty of the expression. And so, you know, beauty plays a role too for me, just to wrap it up and come full circle. So I'll be back tomorrow, 10 o'clock Mountain Time. I hope to see you then. Thank you so much for those of you who came. I'm so glad you were all here. And I will look forward to seeing you again and talking more about the creative life next time. Okay, bye.